Hi everyone, welcome to yet another video. My name is Robin. I am part of the Persistence Labs growth team. And as usual, I have an amazing guest with me today who will be answering some questions about stablecoins on Persistence. So without further ado, welcome Jeroen. Thank you very much for being here. Can you please introduce yourself?
Hey, Robin. Thanks a lot for having me. Yeah, of course. So, hey everyone. My name is Jeroen. I'm responsible for everything that's product on the Persistence ecosystem. So basically, look after all the different products we have within the Persistence ecosystem, and work closely with the product teams and the PMs to make sure that all these products kind of work in the way that users want them to work, and make sure they all kind of work together. So that's like very high level my scope within the Persistence ecosystem.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Well, maybe let's just start with the basics. Let's say I'm completely new to crypto. How would you actually describe stablecoins?
Yeah, so stablecoins, I mean, as the word says it, in a way, it's a stable coin. It's an asset that kind of pegs its value to another asset, like typically a fiat currency. Now, the pegging itself, there's actually different ways of pegging. Like, I think the three main use cases would be a fiat collateralized stablecoin. You have a crypto collateralized stablecoin, and then like an algorithmic, typically non-collateralized stablecoin. And so these three are like different in a way that the first one, the fiat collateralized stablecoin, which is the most common type of stablecoin. It's also the one that we'll talk about today with respect to persistence and like USDC, USDT. But they are typically backed by a reserve or like fiat currency, such as the US dollar. And they make sure that always there's an equivalent amount of fiat currency held in reserve to ensure that the value remains stable. So those examples, as I mentioned, USDC, USDT. Then you have like crypto collateralized stable coins. Typically, an example would be DAI, for example, where you could have ETH, for example, locked up in a vault, and then the DAI is minted accordingly. But it's always going to be over collateralized, meaning that there's actually a larger amount of cryptocurrency held in reserve in order to issue a smaller amount of stable coins, just so that if there's volatility in that crypto asset, it can still always be kind of sold off and redeemed for actual stable coins. Then the last one that I mentioned was the algorithmic stable coins, typically not backed by any like physical or digital asset, but they typically use like an algorithm or a mechanism to control the supply of the issued tokens and aiming to maintain a stable value. So those are the three main ones, but I think for this conversation, really focusing on USDC and USDT, which are used in Cosmos and are those fiat collateralized stablecoins.
Or why would you think that stablecoins are so crucial in decentralized finance?
So I think DeFi by nature, like the way it is like very, how do you say, very volatile in a way. And I do think stablecoins play a very fundamental role to kind of bring some sort of stability to that system, right? So it's in a way an ability for users of DeFi to put their assets, even though they are on chain, back into like a stable currency or a stable token, which is less volatile than the other assets like Bitcoin or Ethereum, for example, that might have huge volatility. And that is, of course, something that is very convenient to be used in DeFi protocols. If it's like, for example, lending or borrowing protocols, it's always good to know like what are you comparing to, right? And most typically in all of the protocols, and even in the mind of most people, they will look at their crypto returns typically in a USD denominated fashion, or other stable coins, of course. But typically that's how people look at it in DeFi.
Yeah, all right, got it. Well, if I zoom into Cosmos now, I remember that it was received as pretty big news that stablecoins like USDC and USDT were coming natively to Cosmos. But if I remember well, before that, we had stablecoins in Cosmos. So what exactly is so different now?
Correct. Yeah, we definitely had stablecoins. The difference is now that they are now native. So I think the word native is very important here. If you look at previously, the other ways of like having stable coins into the ecosystem was mostly bridged. Like you do have like bridges like Gravity or Axelar, for example, that have brought in different like versions of stable coin like USDC or USDT. But with that, of course, you always have a bit of a difficult user experience. You always have the security risks of a bridge. No matter how well vetted these bridges are, there's always that bridging risk or the third-party risk of the bridge that is still there, which is not ideal. And then, of course, like we did have USDC, so the Terra stable coin within Cosmos as well, but that also didn't end up very well. That's one of these algorithmic stable coins that I was talking about. But yeah, basically now the difference is that now these stable coins are natively issued on the Cosmos side. So whether that's through Noble with USDC or whether that's through Kava with USDT, these coins are actually issued there, and the backing is actually happening just directly between those parties. So you don't have the additional like bridging risk that you take as a user. So that's I think that's a good point, and like it is like a free-flowing stable coin natively within the Cosmos ecosystem, which I think is a huge difference from what we had before.
All right, thanks a lot for that. Well, this actually brings me to the topic of today, which is stablecoins on persistence. And why would you say that these native stablecoins are so important for persistence?
Yeah, so persistence, I think itself should position itself like quite well to capture a substantial portion of like the expected stablecoin liquidity influx. If you look at like USDC and USDT, having those on persistence will actually bring a lot of benefits to the persistence ecosystem itself and to the different apps that are actually on persistence, and therefore the users that are using any of the products on the persistence chain. To give a few examples, like it could be having the stable coin pools on Dexter could just be a huge volume generating token. Like typically the swap from USDC to USDT or vice versa would be a pretty high volume generating token. So that would be great for the ecosystem. It also brings that it's a reduced barrier to entry to enter like LSTFi on persistence if there's ample like stablecoin liquidity. It would help to also like deepen the liquidity for XPRT itself, which is the governance token of the persistence ecosystem. It could potentially help to onboard new users onto persistence if you can just enter into any of the products by using USDC or USDT, which many users would already have. That would make it, of course, a lot easier. Yeah, I guess those are just a few of the examples, but I think just having a lot of like stable coins within the ecosystem will make everything a lot like better for the user in a way, and a lot more familiar as well, and more efficient when it comes to DeFi.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I hear you talk about potential benefits, or a lot of potential benefits, but what is the current status of stablecoins on the persistence chain as of today?
Got it. I mean, I haven't literally checked today, but from memory, we have two pools on Dexter currently. One is the USDC USDT pool, which has about, if I'm not mistaken, close to $100,000 worth of liquidity. And then there's a second pool, which is XPRT USDT, which has, I think, if I'm not mistaken, around $30,000 worth of liquidity. So still relatively small numbers. I think the pools itself, they were launched very recently. They have been incentivized by the XPRT token. So currently we're still seeing many users like coming after these incentives in a way, and then providing liquidity into these pools to help and really bootstrap those pools and make them grow. So it's still early days, but at least from what I can see is that these pools are there, they're growing steadily, and there's also some decent volume being generated already on those pools. So that's nice to see.
So last week I saw a tweet from Dexter where they talked about the USDC USDT pool, and they talked about a very favorable swap fee. But why exactly does Dexter offer a more favorable swap rate for stablecoins than anyone else?
That's a good question, and I think to really understand how it all works, you almost need to have like a very deep understanding of how AMMs, or like automated market makers, work. I mean, I have to admit, even myself, like I don't know the smallest details. I think for that, like we have to maybe invite some of the engineers behind these amazing products to talk about it in one of the later episodes. But like in very simple terms, right? Like, so for the USDT USDC pool, we have a pool which is called like a stable swap mechanism. I think typically, if you look at AMMs, as most people know them, like from let's say Uniswap, right? You have different types. Like you have a pool that is like a constant product AMM, which is like the typical X times Y equals K. And then you have like a constant sum pool, which is X plus Y equals K. And each of these have their own kind of benefits, typically for price discovery of each of the assets. But it's following like this curve, like the swap curve, in a way where if you trade one asset typically against another, there's an impact or slippage towards the other asset. Now, what the stable swap pool does is actually it's combining both of these assets, or sorry, both of these like types of pools into one, so that you actually have the benefits of both of these like mechanism to trade, which means that you have within that zone where the assets are very, very close to each other, which they should always be, very efficient swap rates between the two assets. It's like a one-to-one almost, right? But then, of course, if you go very far on that curve, then at some point, these mechanisms will kick in to ensure that there's always liquidity in the pool. Yeah, I think overall, like it's a very clever way of doing it, and kind of taking the best of both worlds in a way to come up with the stable swap mechanism, which has been implemented on Dexter. So yeah.
Yeah, well, that was a very detailed explanation. Thank you for that. That's really helpful. Now, besides these pools on Dexter, what I wanted to ask you as well is, are there any additional upcoming use cases for stablecoins within the persistence ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, of course, that's something we'll definitely be working towards. I think I briefly mentioned it in one of my previous answers, actually. If you could think of, let's say, where you have p-stake currently, if you want to stake or liquid stake Atom, let's say, you would already have to have Atom, right? And then your Atom can be converted into STK Atom. Now, that's actually, for some people might want to have exposure to STK Atom, but they don't really want to go through the hassle of buying Atom. They might actually just use USDC or USDT and input it through the protocol and immediately get STK Atom. And like what happens in the background, for example, would be to swap the USDC for Atom, and then Atom actually stake that. Those things can all be like done in like a single transaction, and like for the user, it should be seamless, whether he has USDC or Atom. In the end, if he wants STK Atom, we want to give him STK Atom, him or her, STK Atom in the easiest possible way, like with the easiest or best user experience. And that's where I think like stablecoins will come in. And then like if you look at like the different protocols that we currently have on the chain, that will be, I think, very beautiful to see how they can work together, like p-stake and Dexter, and then eventually we'll have probably like vaults or borrowing lending protocols. And once you can start combining these different like Lego blocks in a way, I think you'll see very like beautiful use cases, and see, for a user at least, it will be very simple to do like anything, having the stablecoin kind of thing as a starting point.
Yeah, amazing. I feel like I heard there's some alpha in between the lines, but definitely something to look forward to.
Absolutely.
Now, let's say someone who is watching this video is interested in providing liquidity in one of these pools on Dexter. How can they get USDC and USDT on persistence chain to LP on Dexter?
Yeah, Good question. And I mean, luckily, there's some players in the market that actually help a lot with making that very easy for users. And I can immediately think of like the major like DEX aggregators who have like started playing that role of also being that IBC facilitator in a way for users who don't really easily know their way around like how to work with IBC. But basically, if you think of the major DEX aggregators like TFM or Skip protocol, who has their app called IBC.fun, you have Squid protocol or Squid router. I think it's also integrated now in Leap wallets. I think even in Kepler you have a swap function now in which you can do interchain swaps or cross-chain swaps actually. And I think that would be the simplest way for anyone to bring either USDC or USDT onto persistence. Any of these should work. Like we actually worked with all these teams together to integrate the tokens that are on the persistence chain. So that should be fairly straightforward to bring in those assets. And then, of course, to LP them into the pool, that can be done on Dexter itself through the Dexter protocol. So that's, I think, the major or the simplest way to go about it. Of course, you can also do it more manually, where you go to a DEX, for example, like Osmosis, and then you transfer from there. Let's say you buy USDC, you would have to actually transfer it to Noble, and then from Noble you would have to transfer it to the persistence chain. But that's of course, that's a bit of the complexity that these aggregators can take away for the user. So that would be my advice. But of course, I think we have documented all the different ways you can do it, and those are all, I think, on the blog, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, for users who want to do stuff more manually, they can always do that as well.
All right. Well, we'll definitely have to check that out then. Well, I think that almost covers everything that I wanted to ask you. I don't know if there is anything else you would like to add before we conclude this call.
No, I think, I mean, I liked your questions. A lot of good questions. You're a very good host. Thank you for that, Robin. And no, I think overall, like I think you can see it in the way I talk. Like I'm very excited about having more stable coins on Dexter, bringing in more liquidity, creating more use cases for these stable coins. With that, hopefully, and pretty certainly, like we'll see that on-chain activity will increase. I do think that we're on the right path, and our community is very positive about all these changes that we are bringing as well. I hope that we can continue to work on that and continue to ship the way we do, and bring more usability to all of our users.
Amazing. I'm looking forward to what persistence will come up with next. So yeah, Jeroen, thank you very much for joining me today and freeing up some of your precious time. I hope you enjoyed it as well, and I definitely hope that we can chat again in the near future.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Robin.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.